Now, I've had the M2 MacBook Air for over a month now, and I can say with confidence it holds true to its name. Now, I've been using this for all my everyday tasks. It's lightweight, compact, portable. Not to say that the previous MacBook Air wasn't any good, I just feel like this one is somewhat of an upgrade for consumers. This new version kicks off at $1,200, so slightly more than before. This time around, we have an all-new design that sports an even faster M2 chip. It's thinner and lighter this time around, not just more powerful, coming in at 2.7 pounds. The notch is honestly something I don't even think about anymore, and in terms of volume, we're about 20% smaller than that previous model. But at the same time, we have a much larger 13.6-inch display thanks to those much thinner bezels. Now, the Sport Up design looks like a much smaller version of the Pro lineup, which I absolutely love. This thing is very lightweight, very compact, easy to open and hold with one hand, which makes this a great option not just for students, but for people that are out in the field all day. Now, as you guys can see, I'm with the midnight blue colorway here, which is an absolute fingerprint magnet. And at the same time, I think if I went back in time, I'd probably go with the space gray or the silver, just because I can see the paint starting to chip off here around the Thunderbolt port and MagSafe charger. So keep that in mind when making your decision. Now, Apple did keep it minimal with the port selection, which is fine for this version. You have MagSafe and 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports on the left side, along with a headphone jack along the right, which is nice if you run out of juice with your headphones. Now, in terms of display, the M2 MacBook Air is just as good as the Pro lineup. Now, you have thinner bezels, 2560 by 1664 for pixels. You have a much better experience when you're watching movies, editing photos, with the same panel now in a much smaller form factor. Now, as far as nits, it averaged just under 500 with HDR content, which also provided a ton of detail that's now bright enough to where you can experience the action even from wider viewing angles. Now, the speakers haven't disappointed either. We now have a 4-speaker sound system, which sounds actually very good for this size. Here, let's take a listen. Now, it's obviously not as good as the Pro lineup that sports a 6-speaker sound system, but remember, those are a lot more expensive. The only difference really I noticed between this one and my M1 Max is I feel like the M1 Max packs a little bit more in terms of bass. But other than that, for this form factor, I really like the speakers that you get with the M2 Air. Now, getting into performance with the M2 Air, I was able to pretty much tackle all of my tasks in a everyday workflow setting, aside from high-end video editing, which we'll cover here shortly. Jumping between 30 tabs on Chrome while editing photos and checking emails was a breeze with this new chip. And to be honest, it worked just as well as the Pro model when it came to this workflow. Now, Geekbench scores hit 1932 on the single-core CPU test and 8919 on the multi-core test. In comparison to the M1 from last year, that's a 10% increase on the single-core performance and almost a 20% increase on the multi-core test. Which, aside from something like the Dell XPS 13 Plus, I definitely think that this laptop beats out any laptop in its class at this price point. The general population of consumers won't have any trouble for years to come using this beast for their workflows. However, for the 1% of content creators like me, this is not your laptop for editing high-end footage. I mean, we kind of knew that, to be quite honest. Throwing some 422 10-bit footage from my Sony a7 IV with a ton of transitions and animations that we had in this video I dropped last week surely caused some hiccups. Now, you can see this laptop struggling even at a quarter resolution when scrumming through that timeline. Now, obviously this is Premiere Pro, and I'm sure Final Cut users will have a much better experience when editing, but it's worth noting that once this thing heats up, it does start to slow down and struggle a bit, so keep that in mind. High-end footage is a no-go with the M2 Air. Maybe next year. Now, I want you guys to know that this is not a deal breaker by any means for me. If I'm not editing high-end footage with my M1 Max, I'm definitely taking my M2 MacBook Air with me everywhere that I go. It's lightweight, compact, powerful, battery life's amazing, but I do have one gripe with this laptop. You can only connect up to one 6K external display with the M2 MacBook Air. Now, why am I bringing this up? Most Windows laptops in this price range let you connect up to 2 external displays, which obviously is going to be something that consumers think about when they're making their decision if they're doing content creation, if they're students and stuff like that. Now, obviously, a workaround for this is by a curved 34-inch monitor, but at the same time, I feel like it's definitely worth mentioning that you can only connect up to one 6K external display with the M2 MacBook Air, so keep that in mind when you're making your decision. Now, when it came to battery life and charging, this thing was stellar in my testing, and to be honest, probably the best in its class. Even with all the new improvements we see with this year's lineup, in my testing I still saw over 14 hours of battery life, which absolutely destroys something like my ThinkPad Nano or any other Windows laptop in its class. In the box, mine came with the 35-watt charger that's included in the 10-core GPU and 1TB of storage package that I picked up. But to be honest, I haven't used it once since I've been rocking my 120-watt charging brick from Anker, which also lets me charge multiple devices at the same time. Now you can also charge another device like an iPhone with this charging brick, but if you want a faster charge, Apple does offer that 67-watt charger for $20 more, but it's not a MagSafe port, it's a USB Type-C charger. So you're gonna have to live that dongle life if you use one of those ports on the left side of your laptop to charge it via USB Type-C. Now to avoid all this, I just pick up a Anker 120-watt power brick. I made a video for you guys last week if you want to check that out. I'll leave it linked down below for you guys. A ton of power bricks and power banks that you can use to power your devices. I use that 120-watt power brick to charge my laptop through MagSafe, and then I still have 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports left to use for pretty much anything I might need. Alright, this is what the built-in webcam quality looks like on the M2 MacBook Air, and you are listening to the built-in microphone on the M2 MacBook Air as well. If you are new to the channel, please make sure you subscribe, and only if you end up liking this video, please make sure you smash that like button for me. But as you guys can see, it looks a little bit sharper than last year with the M1, but it looks decent in a somewhat well-lit scenario, and the microphone quality doesn't sound too bad. It's pretty much standard. I wouldn't expect too much from this, but as you guys can see, it looks decent, and it sounds somewhat decent as well for this price point. But obviously, if you need a microphone, go ahead and pick up a USB. Can't go wrong. Ugh. I need a haircut, huh guys? Let's get back. Now when it comes to the keyboard and trackpad, this thing is fantastic. It makes it super easy to type on, especially in those longer sessions. Having Touch ID makes that whole experience that much better. But just like every other creator out there, I wish we would have got the Face ID when that notch was implemented. It doesn't make sense to include that notch and not have Face ID for that faster experience when logging in. Hopefully we'll see that next time around with the Air and the Pro lineup. But at the same time, you're probably wondering, should I pick up this or the M2 MacBook Pro? Now the difference for me with that is when you're doing heavier workloads, the M2 MacBook Pro will handle a little bit better when it does coding, high-end video editing, and stuff like that. But it's not a significant difference. The other difference would be battery life is a little bit better than the M2 MacBook Air. But at the same time, nothing's changed with that laptop. You still got last year's design. Nothing's changed at all. With the Air, on the other hand, you get a lighter, more compact new design, a much better and bigger display with slimmer bezels, MagSafe, a sharper 1080p webcam. So for me, I definitely recommend the M2 MacBook Air over the M2 MacBook Pro, and that's what I've been recommending to family and friends. Now, using this thing for over a month now, I can't tell you how much I love having something this compact and powerful at this price point. The only issue I have with this laptop is it only being able to support up to one external display. But then again, you can just use a larger curved monitor, which I have been doing all along. Now yes, you can use the M2 MacBook Air to edit videos, to write code, to produce music, but at the same time, if you're part of that 1% like myself who needs to edit higher end video footage, you should stick with the M1 Max 16-inch MacBook Pro. But aside from that, the M2 MacBook Air is by far the best laptop out there in today's market at that price point, and I'd highly recommend it for anyone looking for a new laptop. Now the holidays are right around the corner, so I can see this being the best gift for friends and family that are in need of a new laptop. But I'm curious to know what you guys think. Let me know down below, where you'll also find the links to everything that we covered in today's episode. If you want to see more, make sure you follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DetroitFury, and if you enjoy this content, please make sure you smash that like button for me, subscribe, turn on your post notifications. It really means a lot to me. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you guys in my next episode. Peace.